You know, some people compare Dick Cheney to a real-life Darth Vader, but after watching this movie, he's more like Emperor Palpatine. Vice is directed by Adam McKay and starring Christian Bale, Amy Adams, Steve Carrell, Sam Rockwell, and Jesse Plemons. As usual, there will be no plot spoilers in this video. This is the newest film from director Adam McKay, who recently directed The Big Short, which had a lot of critical acclaim from a few years ago, and this film centers around the person of Dick Cheney, portrayed by Christian Bale, and it centers around his life and political career and the complexities that go with it, but it takes a very comedic as well as dramatic approach to it. Let's dive into this. Adam McKay is a director who has spent a lot of his career making comedic films, and now he's making more of these dramatic comedic hybrids, and this film is all about the person of Dick Cheney. For those of you not familiar with who Dick Cheney is, he was the vice president under the recent president George W. Bush. Before that, he was Secretary of State, he was Chief of Staff during an administration, so he has had a very long political career. He was also the CEO of Halliburton, which I believe was an oil company, and this film covers a lot of his life in an interesting way. And what we get here more specifically is that Christian Bale portrays him really well. The acting in this film, I think from everyone in general, is fantastic. Christian Bale famously is known for losing weight or gaining weight depending on which roles that he has taken on. It is not a healthy practice, but he keeps doing it, and he did it for this movie. He gained so much weight to portray an older Dick Cheney that he looks really close to what Dick Cheney looks like. He certainly sounds like him, which is really incredible. I believe Christian Bale is one of those very serious, almost method actors who really gets into his roles. And this film, he really gives us an amazing performance, one of the best I've seen from 2018. But the film is not only about Christian Bale and the character of Dick Cheney, it's more about the changing of politics around him, what politics was when he first started out and what it became during his lifetime, and the influences that Dick Cheney had on those politics. What we see is a picture of a man who is very power hungry when it comes to political power and really stretching the office of vice president into new ways that it had never been used for before, specifically under George W. Bush, who was portrayed by Sam Rockwell in this film in a rather comedic way, in a way that we all have kind of known George W. Bush to be portrayed as. The chemistry between Dick Cheney and Lynn Cheney, who was being portrayed by Amy Adams, I thought was fantastic. The family dynamic within the film I thought was really interesting in how it impacted his character. And Amy Adams, I think, is one of the most underrated, fantastic actresses we have, and I'm really glad to see her once again flexing her acting muscles in a really good role. And this film is very interesting when it comes to tones, because tonally for me, it's kind of a bit all over the place. The film is satirically comedic, but it's also a drama, and it's also a bit of a biopic, and the film is constantly meshing all of those things into one, and sometimes you get good and sometimes you get bad, so the film overall is a little messy for me. And it's also messy in the way it is portrayed to us. We are jumping around from different points of Dick Cheney's life and career, so things are a little loose when it comes to all of those things, and sometimes the editing isn't quite crisp, sometimes the cinematography isn't quite crisp, and what we get is a rather jumbled mess of a rather complicated person, and sometimes the film wants us to laugh at him, and sometimes the film wants us to sympathize with him, or sometimes wants us to empathize with him. Also, the film bills itself as kind of this secret, unhidden, information about Dick Cheney's life, but most of the information we are given in this film, I think, is stuff that people already know, or maybe if they don't already know, they think is true or that they can just look up on their own. So a lot of the information wasn't new to me personally, so none of the revelatory or the more scandalous type things that they went into in this film didn't surprise me at all. It was just stuff that I already knew, given to me in a rather satirical, comedic way. And a lot of the comedy in this film I thought was fantastic. But a lot of the comedy is rooted within political context that you kind of need to know, because if you don't know the political context in which this comedy is delivered to you, the jokes are going to go right over your head. I was probably the only person laughing consistently throughout this movie in the theater, and there were quite a few people in the theater with me. So this film is very specific when it's going towards an audience. So I'm going to give this film a 3.6 out of 5 stars. The acting is fantastic. The story is interesting if you are interested in political history, specifically recent political history. If you're just interested in biopics, I think you'll get a lot out of it. But the story is delivered to us in a rather jumbled and messy way, which really creates a distance between the viewers and the film. And also, I think it's tonally all over the place. So that has been my review of Vice. If you like this video, please check out the other videos on my channel.